Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Dedicated Personal Statements, session number 5. This is our second to last session. How's everybody doing? Everyone doing well? So thank you for everyone who submitted your personal statement. I just chose them randomly, and I didn't even choose the whole thing. I just chose a paragraph. So if you see a paragraph in here that belongs to you, I appreciate it. Thank you for sending them. So, personal statements. We only have 2 more classes about this. In the chat box, how do you guys feel about your personal statement? Is it coming along or are you struggling? Okay, Diana says good. Isaacson says better. Diana says coming along. Cameron says pretty good. Varsha says feel a little confident. So that's good news. It seems like the chat box was pretty optimistic about that. I was actually anticipating that you guys were having trouble, so that's great. All right, let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, where is my go to the next slide thing? Aha. So class breakdown, just a quick recap, everybody. So we've already talked about following the directions. We've already talked about organizing your essay. We've already talked about being honest, being vulnerable. We've already talked about it's not really about you. That was last week's session. And then today we're going to talk about, drum roll please. Ooh, I actually mixed those up. Sorry. So that is not true. Today we're going to talk about proofread. So sorry about that. Yeah, that was my mistake. So proofread will be number 5, and then utilizing powerful writing techniques will be number 6, which maybe actually makes more sense, to be honest. Okay, so actually that was one of those fortunate mistakes. You guys know about those fortunate mistakes, right? You make a mistake and then it turns out it actually makes more sense. All right, so today we're talking about proofreading, which is why I wanted your samples, right? I don't really need your samples for utilizing powerful writing techniques. Okay, sound good, everybody? Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Oh, we have a question from Varsha. Hey, Varsha.
Yeah, hi, Greg. So
Hey.
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
I
you.
have a question. I missed this. It's not really about you. I missed this session. So I did not see you on the website. Where can I find this session?
So are you looking at the chat box right now?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so if you go to this website right here, you can see it there.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, for those of you who are listening at home and can't see the chat box, that is www.gregmatt.com/admissions. That is www.gregmatt.com/admissions. One more time, that is www.gregmatt.com/admissions. That is ADMISSIONS. A as in apple, D as in dog, M as in Mary, I as in indigo, S as in Sam, S as in Sam, I as in indigo, O as in orange, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam. And one more, no. Have you guys ever heard commercials that do that? Make you want to kill yourself. It's like, why do you repeat that shit 5 times, man? Terrible. Sorry if I brought any bad memories back for you guys. All right. Let's move on. All right, so today we're going to talk about proofreading, polishing matters. All right, polishing your car, polishing, your clothes, the way you look, polishing your, essentially the impression that you give people. So it's got to look clean. It's got to be easy to read. It's got to look like you spent time on it. Now, I'm not saying you didn't spend time on it. What I'm saying is impressions are everything. So let's imagine you spend 10 hours on your personal statement, but it still has a lot of grammar mistakes. What will the admissions committee think? They'll think you didn't spend time on it. Now, is that fair? No, it's not fair. But life is not fair, unfortunately. If 2020 has taught us anything, tell me if you agree with this. It's not really about reality. It's more about perception. So I think 2020 has shown us that the idea of an objective reality is becoming harder to come by. At least an objective reality we all agree with. And so what that means is perception is kind of everything. The same is true of your personal statement. Even if you spent 20 or 30 hours on it, and you spent a lot of work and you really were stressing about it and you tried your best, if it's full of a bunch of grammar mistakes, will the admissions committee know anything about that? Will they know about the time you spent on it, the stress you felt? Do they know anything about that? No, they don't know. They're just going to think that you wrote it in a very fast manner, didn't really care. So perception matters. And I thought that I would introduce this idea with, paradoxically or coincidentally, a case study of a Polish company, as in the country Poland. So I'm going to show you that Polish matters using a Polish company. Here we go. Are you guys familiar with this game? It's called Cyberpunk 2077. So this game came out last month, and it was hyped up to be like amazing. It was hyped up to be better than Red Dead Redemption 2, better than anything Rockstar put out. It was hyped up to be like a combination of a Rockstar game and a Naughty Dog game. So Rockstar does open worlds very well. Naughty Dog does story-driven kind of first-person stuff very well. And so it was almost going to be this cross between the two. And then I remember playing this on the first day that I could, opening day, on my PlayStation 4. That'll be important in a second. And I remember thinking, okay. So it started off a little bit buggy. And of course, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You're like, it's not that big of a deal. But then you keep playing, and all of a sudden, your PlayStation 4 just turns into a blue screen. And you're like, that's weird. And you go, man, I must be kind of unlucky. So then you start doing the story, and then you realize that doing the story missions are very difficult because stuff is always missing. Like they tell you to go over here, but it's difficult to find out how to go there. Like the map is kind of messed up. You start noticing that the world seems very sterile. And then you get to a point of the game where you first walk into the city. Now that's a very graphically intense moment. It takes a lot of resources on your computer or your console, and the game slows down to about 10 frames per second and looks like something that's happening in slow motion. It is at that moment you realize you've been scammed. At least for me. That's when it happened. When I walked into the downtown city and my computer or PlayStation 4 slowed down to such a crawl that I realized I had just been scammed out of $65. So naturally, the first thing I do is go to Sony's chat, and it was still online at this time, and I'm like, hey, I want a refund for this. It just doesn't work. I mean, it's not that I hate the game. It literally doesn't work. It's crashing my PS4, and it slows down to a crawl. It just doesn't work. Unfortunately, it's Sony's policy not to give refunds, etc., etc. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So then I start going to the subreddit for this game. A lot of people are having the same issue, etc., etc. I call my credit card company and I say, listen, I'm not one to complain about credit card transactions. If I buy something and I make a mistake, hey, it's my fault. But this is literally a scam. Like, it doesn't work. Like, I'm buying a product that doesn't work. And they told me it did. The developers of this company, CD Projekt Red, said it worked on the PlayStation 4, no problem. I'm like, it doesn't work. It's fraud. It was a lie. And so then they took a lot of my information down, and then 2 weeks later, there was such an outcry and such a problem with the game, it just didn't work, that Sony and Microsoft had no choice but to start giving refunds because it literally didn't work. It was like buying a brick. It's literally a piece of garbage, at least on the PlayStation 4 or the older Xbox. And so finally, they start initiating this refund process, and my credit card company got back to me and said, hey, we've refunded this, yeah, so don't worry about it. And so, long story short, I was scammed out of my time, but not my money, because it looks like I did get a refund. So this game from the Polish company CD Projekt Red had such a lack of polish, and they lied about it for so much, or so often. I don't care if they fix it. And then ironically, I spelled the name of the game wrong. So there you go. I did that on purpose, everybody. That was a test. That was a test to see if you're paying attention here. It's called polish, everybody. Okay. So they did such a poor job that their reputation might be irreparably damaged, maybe. And that's kind of what happens when you send a personal statement with grammar mistakes or a lack of proofreading. It really damages your reputation to a point where I think you cannot recover. That's how important this is. So let's take a look at what happened to CD Projekt Red. So this is their stock, everybody. So in middle of September, it was about $30. And then right here, when they released the game, this is their game release right here. It was like $33 right there. And then, boom. And then this is the bargaining stage when people are like, oh, it's not that bad. Hey, it's not that bad, everybody. Hey, yeah, it's buggy, but the story's cool. It's amazing. Yeah, it's not that bad. And then people really started realizing it was shitty, and then shitty, and shitty, and shitty. And then today, check this out. So this is news from today. Look at this. Again, I'm testing you guys. See that? See? A good teacher puts tests in his PowerPoint presentation just to make sure you guys are, paying attention to the lesson at hand, right? You always got to proofread. So news from today, Polish competition watchdog investigating the game. Yeah. CD Projekt Red could be fined up to 10% of its annual income, which is a lot of money. So, bottom line here, you have to proofread and polish a personal statement, a statement of purpose. You do not have to proofread or polish a PowerPoint presentation, but you probably should, but you don't have to. I think you guys will still love me after my 2 mistakes here. I hope so. But when it comes to an actual personal statement and statement of purpose, it literally has to be mistake-free. It has to be mistake-free. Okay. Any questions about this? No, Minush, they spell project incorrectly on purpose because they're trying to be rebellious. You get it, right? Whenever you spell a word wrong on purpose, it kind of shows everybody you're a badass. Yeah. All right. Let's move on. So today's lesson is proofread, proofread, proofread. In most cases, admissions committees don't get to meet you. They just get to meet your personal statement. You wouldn't show up to a job interview looking disheveled, so it's important that your personal statement or statement of purpose serves as your proxy in a reputable and respectable fashion. To put it simply, you really can't proofread enough. The more proofreading you do on these personal statements and statement of purpose, in my opinion, the better. All right. So let's look at an example. We're going to proofread this one together. And notice I'm not only going to focus on grammar, I'm going to focus on other things as well. So everyone take about a minute or 2 minutes to read this, and then we'll talk about it. All right, here we go. Working at blank, I quickly developed my love for children and an ambition to serve the less fortunate. Although there was no expectation or structure set by the school, and my only training was observing 2 classes, I made my mission. Can you make a mission? Or do you make it my mission? Yeah, don't you make it my mission? I made it my mission right there. I made it my mission. You go, Greg, what's the big deal? Who cares? It's just a 2-letter pronoun. Yeah, I mean, if it's one mistake, it's really not a big deal. You know, consider it like a small mustard stain on your shirt. Do you guys like deli mustard? Like spicy brown mustard? Oh, I love that stuff. A small mustard stain on your shirt. However, if you have a lot of these stains, it's probably not great, right? I made it my mission to uplift the quality of my students' lives. Can you uplift quality, or can you only uplift people or feelings? What do you think? What object is often used with uplift? Yeah, it's going to be feelings or people, right? So this is a little bit of a strange phrase right here. After multiple buses and a mile walk through a busy city each day. Now this is a little bit confusing because walk through is a word. Like, you know, like GRE walkthrough, old GRE walkthrough. So in my opinion, I feel like I would rephrase this just to avoid confusion. After multiple buses and a mile-long trek, something like that. I came home planning the next lesson. I came home to plan the next lesson. Instead of focusing solely on books, I wanted to do something to improve the students' motivation and engagement. I taught them with songs, brought in some small rewards, created materials, and tailored my methods to fit their individual needs using the limited resources I had on hand. I also put together my first fundraising project, raising money in Thailand remotely. Now this is a little bit confusing because is this the name of the project? Is this what the project is? To me, I would rephrase this because it's not exactly what's going on with the thing after the project. Maybe you could use a colon, for example. That might make it a little bit easier. Even with no previous experience running a fundraising campaign, I was determined to raise blank dollars. This is not how we write dollars. What we do is we put the dollar sign and then the number right here. Finally, you saying that you're determined to raise dollars doesn't actually say if you were successful or not. So right now, I am determined to marry Angelina Jolie. That is my determination. I think I'm going to do it. It's happening, boys. It's happening. Right? So I would rephrase the word determined. Because, you know, you can be determined to do anything. It doesn't mean you were successful, right? I allocated it to various projects. I allocated the funds. I would say that. Buying school supplies and sports equipment. So again, this would be the use of a colon right here. Buying school supplies and sports equipment, sending 2 mothers to a sewing school so they can start selling uniforms, and organizing a charcoal shop to fund the school and encourage it to be self-sufficient. What is a charcoal shop? And can you organize a shop? Can you organize a shop? Whenever you say organize a shop, it kind of means like make it look neat, make it look tidy. I think what you mean to say is found or establish. Undoubtedly, I learned a lot from my experience there, but more importantly, I realized that I could not simply change the world in 3 months. I also realized this in my travels as well. In my travels, changing a culture is almost impossible. So don't even try. Just absorb it. You know, do what you can. Make small contributions when you can. Even thinking about changing a culture that has some weird implications in it, maybe some cultural superiority stuff. But yeah, I do agree with this author. Changing the world in 3 months is not going to work. Instead, I needed to commit fully to the issue by pursuing a career that affects positive change in people's lives. I think you mean E. Let me Google that, because affect means to cause. Affect change or affect change. Yeah, affect is correct. Yeah. With an E, everybody. Okay, now here's a question I have for you guys. Who read this and thought there were no problems? Or very few problems? Right? But as you can see, there's a lot of red. So do you see what I mean? This is harder than you think it is. All right, so let's talk about how do you even do this? I mean, so one way is you can pay somebody some money to look at it. That's one way to do it. Another way you can do it is have native speakers. Maybe you have family or friends living in America, the UK, or Canada take a look at it. Another thing you can do is have people who are educated in your own country, if you're not from the U.S. or from a English-speaking country. People who are PhDs or people who have been published. They tend to really kind of be good writers. So that's another thing you can do. Okay, using something like Grammarly, I wouldn't suggest, only because it's just an algorithm. Good writing is a little bit more subjective than just an algorithm, right? All right, let's take a question from Diana. Hey, Diana.
Hi, Greg. Thank you. So I'm still confused. So should I follow the rule like always before? Okay, so if we have two independent clauses, and should I put a comma before and or, and basically before and or.
If you have a new subject, yes.
If I have a new subject.
Correct.
Like I, he, she, it, right?
Yeah, so for example, you could say, I love pizza and you love bananas, comma or no comma?
Comma.
Right, because you have I and you as the two subjects, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So it's the same rule about or and.
Yep, same rule with all the coordinating conjunctions, correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Let's go to Gian. Hey, Gian.
Hey, Greg.
What's up?
It's a matter of style as opposed to our grammatic structure. I was thinking that the sentence after multiple buses and a mile walkthrough, that could be stricken off, and it's just instead of focusing solely on books.
Yeah, you could. I agree. That's more of a style question.
Yeah, it's more because this one I think is more of like, I'm showing my determination. I'm going through multiple buses and a mile walk, but compared to maybe thousands of experiences we're in, this is normal. I mean, it would just be like a normal.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So I think Gian's opinion is perfectly valid here, and this is why it's important that more than one person look at your personal statement. Again, another paradox of personal statements, right? So number one, it's not really about you. Number two, we want a lot of other people to look at your personal statement, so Gian's opinion, completely valid. And that kind of brings up the point, whenever you guys are getting feedback on one of these bad boys, don't limit the reader to just grammar or mechanics. Also say, hey, is there any repetition? Is there anything that you find confusing, etc., stuff like that. Okay. Another thing, you have to manage your defensiveness. Is anyone like me? I tend to get defensive. Constructive feedback, especially when I was younger, I would get defensive. Maybe one of my foibles, one of my flaws. Is anyone like that? Yeah, so you have to understand something. If you're asking someone to give you feedback, they're going to give you feedback. And you just have to take it. You know what I'm saying? Now, if someone's giving you unsolicited feedback, they're just giving you feedback just to give you feedback, just to be mean or just to be a dick, no problem. Get defensive there. If someone's just making fun of your shirt for no reason whatsoever other than to make themselves feel better and make you feel bad, you have every right to get defensive. But if you're specifically seeking feedback from somebody and you start arguing with their points, are people going to be willing to give you feedback? No. Because they're not trying to get into an argument with you. They're trying to give you their feedback. Does that mean that their feedback is the word of God? No, it doesn't. It just means you have to get multiple sources of feedback, right? And then you can kind of synthesize all of that stuff together to make your personal statement better. Yeah? Does that make sense, everybody? So whenever you ask somebody for feedback, do not get defensive. You just have to say, oh, thank you so much for your suggestions. If they say, hey, I'm a little bit confused by this part, and I say, okay, what do you think I'm trying to say? No, I wasn't really going for that. Okay, you're right. I should probably rephrase that. I often say this, the customer is always right, that famous business saying. When it comes to writing, who's always right, the writer or the reader? The reader, yeah, the reader is always right. Assuming the person is from the right audience. If you give your personal statement to a toddler and the toddler's like, I don't understand any of this, that doesn't mean you have to edit your personal statement. Give it to the right audience. The right audience would be, professors, stuff like that. Okay? Any questions, everybody? Any questions before we look at another example? Okay. Here's another thing I want to tell you guys about. If someone's asking you for feedback, is that a license to just say a million negative things? No. So what you have to try to do is you have to try to kind of, hey, I feel like you did this well. I feel like maybe this could be improved a little bit. You have to kind of strike a balance as much as possible. Don't give criticism just to give criticism. If you really think that it's quite good, say, hey, I really thought this was quite good. Something like that. All right, guys, go ahead and give this one a shot. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, but instead of just reading it, I want you to actually think about, is there any feedback you would give this person? Okay? 2 minutes, everybody. Okay, so before I take a volunteer, I kind of divide feedback into two categories. And to use a medical analogy, there are people who have some kind of trauma or triage, however it's pronounced. Basically, it's like a medical emergency. A medical emergency means that the grammar and the mechanics are bad to a point where probably the personal statement should be redone. Then you have people who have kind of like a serious injury. A serious injury, these are the people who can still, get a doctor's appointment, but it is serious. It has to be addressed. That's issues with clarity. That's issues with, a fair number of grammar mistakes or something like that. And then finally, you have the people who, it's like a health checkup. So these kind of people, their personal statement and their statement of purpose really doesn't have many grammar mistakes. Maybe they just want to kind of cut out the repetition or cut out things that aren't exactly working. So in the health checkup, it's more about style. In trauma, it's basically in the redo territory. Like you have to redo it. And then finally, in serious injury, I would say that, you have to almost go line by line and really address the grammar and things like that. Okay. So can I take a volunteer? How would you edit this? Let's go with Jainam. Hey, Jainam.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
Good. How are you? So how about you give me 5 things feedback that you would provide?
As in individual changes?
Sure. Yeah. 5 individual changes. Sure.
So in the second line, my father, though being a businessman.
So this is actually not a grammar mistake. So if you really wanted to reduce it, you would say, though a businessman, like that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And can we just redact the word has in the third line?
Yeah, you can read it. Sure.
I am telling you that can we remove it?
Oh, no, because this is actually, you're saying to use simple past instead of present perfect. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I would say present perfect works here a little bit better, but no, actually, you know what? I agree with you. Sure. Yeah, we can remove that. Why not? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Then I found these two to be more catchy.
Which one?
The one which I told you.
Oh, you mean inculcated? Yeah, you mean simple past?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. You convinced me.
Then, furthermore, I developed a flair for electronics by seeing my uncle's projects that he researched for a company he is employed in. Is that correct for he is employed in?
In my opinion, no, because they're using simple past right here.
Yes,
so
and here is using present.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I developed a flair for electronics. I probably wouldn't use that word.
Yes.
At least I don't really hear that word used that much in American English in that kind of context. Okay, how about the word uncle? Do you see anything wrong with the uncle?
Uncle's apostrophe?
No, so it's not capitalized. In American English,
yes.
Uncle is not capitalized. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, how about one more, Janam?
I can't find it because I just went on reading it.
Okay, no worries. Thank you for volunteering.
Welcome.
Let's go to Cameron. Cameron, what kind of feedback do you have here?
Hey, Greg, how's it going?
Good.
Hey, so I guess like a high level thing, when I read it, the readability from my standpoint, as like I'm lucky enough to be a native speaker, it just is not very well connected or readable.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it starts with hindsight, comma, like that's just not something I see very often, and I think that's probably a misusage.
It should be in hindsight.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the other stuff would be like inculcated. I probably wouldn't use in this context.
That's called word choice. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the same would go for a couple of the other words in there.
Yeah, like remember I identified flair as one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Did you identify other ones?
Yeah, enthusiastically, I probably wouldn't. I think it's more, you could maybe be more like focus on like curiosity rather than excitement.
Right, and also elucidated.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with you. So I agree with Cameron, and I think this is why native speaker voices are kind of valuable, not because they're inherently better or anything, only because usage is a big part of language, not just grammar, but what we call usage. And it would be very unlikely for a native speaker to use the word inculcated or the word kind of elucidated in this fashion. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. Do you have any other commentary?
I think that's pretty much it. And then just make sure we don't have run-on sentences. I know I'm really bad at that. And all of the statement of purposes that I've read, we tend to just ramble on too much when we could be more concise.
Right, yeah. So thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks, Rick.
All right, so I'm going to go through this and give you kind of my feedback. So I'll erase everything. Okay, so number one, in hindsight, I see myself. So already this is quite strange because hindsight means we're talking about the past. But I see myself means my current view of myself, my current identity. So I think that's what Cameron was talking about. It's like the readability, maybe he couldn't exactly put his finger on it, but the readability of it is quite strained at times. I see myself as an inquisitive child, born to a middle-class family of ordinary educational and cultural background, middle-class family of unordinary educational and cultural background. My father, though a businessman, inculcated in me, again, the word choice, the seeds of logical thinking. I mean, to me, this just conjures up images that might be contrary to what you're going for here. So what you're trying to say is my father kind of cultivated a sense of logic and rational thinking, in me. I feel like that's a better way of saying it. And intriguing ideas quite conceivably much before. Now, I want you to actually read this, everybody. Okay. And I just want you to ask yourself, is it readable? And again, that gets to Cameron's point here. I'm going to read this to you guys. Logical thinking and intriguing ideas quite conceivably much before formally joining. Let me read that one more time. Intriguing ideas quite conceivably much before formally joining. It almost sounds like a tongue twister, right? Doesn't it sound like a tongue twister? Yeah, it just sounds like a lot of words are kind of being put together, which it makes it quite difficult to read in this case. Now, Cameron did mention run-on sentences, but I think he's using the term incorrectly. What he meant to say was wordiness. Run-on sentences are an actual grammar mistake. This actually has very few grammar mistakes. So again, you want to give, good feedback as well. The grammar here is not bad. The grammar is quite good. What's hurting it is the wordiness. Okay, let's keep going. Furthermore, I developed a flair. We've already talked about that. Uncle should be not capitalized. Uncle's projects that he researched for the company he was employed in. He always used to get several fabricated printed circuit boards with various electronic circuits like analog, digital, and power electronic circuits embedded on them. Now, this sentence is not necessarily a bad sentence, but telling me about what your uncle received at his place of employment requires a lot of words. And the question is, how is this serving your personal statement? It would be like me saying, for example, my mom at her job had to deal with, many issues. What purpose is that serving? Am I trying to show that I admire my mom and my mom has thus influenced me? So you have to be careful that you're not just writing sentences that serve no purpose. Okay, so it seems like he's writing that I was able to learn a lot from him. I just think it could have been done a little bit better. I enthusiastically asked him a lot of questions and he had elucidated a few chunks of it. We don't know what it is. We don't know what this is. That's what we call an ambiguous pronoun. But I never really understood them until I got to my bachelor's program, and this should have an apostrophe. Okay, so as you can see in our 3 levels where we're talking about trauma, serious injury, and health checkup, in my opinion, this is a serious injury. So these issues need to be addressed quite quickly, specifically the readability of the personal statement. Okay, let me take a question from anybody. Does anybody have any questions before we look at another example? Let's go to Divya. Hey, Divya.
Hi, Greg. So I have two questions.
Sure.
The first one being, furthermore, somehow I feel I'm not able to connect this furthermore with the previous part of it, because after the furthermore, after the word, uh, the writer went on and say that something about their uncle,
Sure. So you're
and
saying that there's
in
no
the previous
clear
paragraph.
logical connection here, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah,
Okay, fair
yeah.
enough. Yep, fair enough. All right.
And another question was, how personal can we get in our essays
In
or
my
personal
opinion, quite
statements?
personal. I mean, one of our lessons was be honest, be vulnerable. And I feel like if you're speaking from the heart, it's usually going to read better than if you're not. So I think you can get
Okay.
quite personal. Yeah. Okay, let's do a question from Diana. Hey, Diana.
Thank you, Greg. So I still didn't get. So if you don't have any, any teacher, any tutor who can help you to proofread your personal statements, then what should you do? I can bring to the college, with grammatical mistakes.
Yes, you can. Why not? Go to the
Um,
college and look for the writing center, the writing tutor.
in the college.
Sure.
But for personal statements, I don't think they do it. I mean, it's like your personal, you should prepare by yourself. You should just bring it ready.
Every university worth its salt has a writing center, and I would say 99% of students don't take advantage of it to their own peril. The
Okay, are
good,
they free?
I mean, are you currently enrolled in a university?
No, but I'm going to soon, so I'm getting ready.
Okay, that's what you need the personal statement for.
Yes, yes.
So there's a couple things you can do because I know you live in America from previous discussions. There has to be native speakers that you can ask a favor of.
Okay.
Right.
But I mean, some of them don't really, they're not very specific and meticulous. They don't pay attention.
Which is
Something
why
like
you want to get more than one piece of feedback. So, actually tell them what you want to look for. Hey, do you notice any grammar mistakes, number one? And then finally, how readable is the essay? I think that's a very important question. How readable is the essay? That's another thing you can do. Another thing you can do is just take advantage of a service, but make sure you're not using a service that kind of writes them for you. Try to get a service that works with you to kind of find out exactly what you're trying to say, and then you guys can come together and then think of a better way to say it and address those grammar mistakes.
Okay, so two options. I either go to college and ask this center, right? Or I just look for native speakers and ask them to help me.
Or, like I said, try to find some kind of service that will work with you, not do it for you.
Like service, you mean like you pay and they help you, right?
Yeah, but be very specific about what you want. Be very specific. Don't say, I don't want you guys to write this for me. That's not the goal. The goal is I want you to, help me proofread it, help me edit it, tell me anything that maybe doesn't read very well. Be very specific with what you're looking for.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And guys, there's a lot of like English literature people out there, like who are struggling to find employment. I bet if you offer them anywhere from 20 to 50 an hour, I bet that they would be on board with you. I just can't imagine that they wouldn't. Just for 1 hour of work, make sure you're on the call with them. You have to be on the call with them. Don't just send them the personal statement. That's a waste of time because they have to be able to like ask you, hey, what were you trying to say here? Because the way you have it phrased right here is not exactly the right way to say it. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and look at another example. All right, guys, go ahead and read this one, everybody, and I'll give you maybe 3 minutes. Good luck. Okay, so here we go. I hail from a normal, middle-class Indian family that has helped me strategize my life towards great ambitions and chase after my dreams. So I hail from a normal, middle-class Indian family. And you have to ask them, is that what caused you to strategize your life? Or were you just lucky that this specific family has? Because the difference between that would be the difference between that and which. So that's question number one, which is why whenever you edit these things, you want to have the person available to ask them, hey, what exactly were you trying to say here? Strategize my life. I'm not sure that I would phrase it this way. It's kind of awkward phrasing, in my opinion. Towards great ambitions. Can you strategize toward an ambition? Again, phrasing. And chase after my dreams. I understood at a very early age that success comes out of our hard work, sincerity, and the yearning for perfection. So here we're using the word our, but we're not using it here and here, so I would probably just eliminate it. Right from school, awkward phrasing. American English wouldn't say right from school, I don't think. I was a very disciplined child, mainly because of the way I was raised by my parents, comma, who are teachers. If you don't have the comma, it implies that you have like 7 parents and only 2 of them are teachers, so be careful. I was always a very headstrong individual. I took part in all student activities, clubs, and very active in sports. Does the fact that you took part in student activities, clubs, and you were very active in sports identify you as headstrong? What do you think? No. So what's going on here is, number one, we have a misunderstanding of the word headstrong, or number two, these two sentences are not connected to each other. Either case is bad. I took part in all student activities, clubs, and very active in sports. That right there is a serious injury grammar mistake. I took part in all student activities, joined many clubs, and participated in many sports. It is now parallel structure. I learnt very early to balance academics and extracurriculars. I worked sincerely in my higher secondary and secured 98.2%, comma, which got me into a very prestigious university. Should I capitalize that? No, because that's not the name. Right there, and then you should say university in South India, and then this right here. So that is the grammar. However, is this an organized paragraph? Do these sentences connect in any way to each other? A lot of you guys are saying yes, in my opinion. It's just my opinion, everybody. This is not an organized paragraph. It is not an organized paragraph. What it is a series of sentences. It's a series of sentences. I did this, 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 I did this. Here, let me give you an example. I really like playing video games. Furthermore, I enjoy bananas. One time I was promoted in my job. I also won an award for swimming that one year. In my free time, I like to put together computers. Do you see how none of these sentences are connected? It's just like listing a series of facts, right? Fact 1, fact 2, fact 3, fact 4. So in my opinion, this might fall under kind of the trauma category, where we might want to think about redoing it. Greg, I don't want to redo it. I've already spent 20 hours on it. I'm sorry, man. I really am. I apologize. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm just saying I don't think this is conveying the message you wanted to convey, right? So in my opinion, I would probably look into redoing this. And what that means is really having the organization mapped out before I start writing. That's why the organization is so important. Okay. Once you have better organization and once it flows a little bit more cleanly, we can then start talking about the grammatical issues. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about this one? Or any questions in general? All right, we have a question from Vedant. Hey, Vedant.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm actually running on caffeine actually. Um, so my question was, like, since it came up, what are the options for someone who doesn't live in America?
So yeah, I don't want to give everyone the impression that if you don't live in America or you didn't grow up with American English, you're screwed. Please, I don't want to give anyone that impression. What I'm saying is, you probably put it this way: if I'm working in India, right, for example,
Mhm.
at some point when I write an email to my Indian boss, I'm probably going to want an Indian colleague of mine to look at it, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm probably phrasing things that are not exactly how kind of they're phrased in India. I might be stepping on cultural boundaries that I don't even know about and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So my advice to you would be try your best either through money, money's the great equalizer, right? Or through just connections to maybe friends or family in America. Try your best to get this personal statement in front of somebody kind of well versed in American English. Do you think that's possible in your case?
I guess because I guess there's some communities online regarding colleges
I would
on
probably
Reddit
not use
maybe.
that. I would not use that. That's like trusting Reddit to
Uh,
give you good advice. Yeah, here
uh,
I'll give you some good advice, everybody. Don't trust Reddit. There you go. If you ever go to the relationship subreddit and like, oh my god, my boyfriend forgot to make me coffee this morning, and then the most upvoted comment is, this guy is toxic. You need to break up with him. This is a disaster. You need to get out of this relationship. Stat. Okay? Don't even tell him where you're going. Just out there. When he's at work, just pack up the bags, leave. So, in my opinion, using some community like that is probably not the best advice. You need to get it in front of like someone doing their masters in America or Canada or UK or whatever it is. You need to maybe make use of a service. But like I said, be very explicit with that service and say, listen, I don't want you to write this for me. That's not what I want. I just want a tutoring hour. I want us to go through this together. I know you're good at English. I know you're a tutor. I know you have a degree in English literature or whatever it is. I'll pay you $30 for your time, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
mhm.
And then
Okay.
finally, if that doesn't work, do you live in India?
Yeah, I live in India.
I mean, Indians, especially, professors and stuff like that, are extremely good at English. Like, extremely good. Is it possible to get the personal statement in front of one of those guys? Or one of those women as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but I guess Indian English is more inclined toward the British sort of English.
There's nothing wrong with British writing, probably in the eyes of the admissions committees. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. What you have to be careful of is, Indian English is its own dialect, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that sometimes we say things differently than you do, right? I'll give you one example.
Mhm.
Am I audible? The first time I heard that, it really threw me off guard. Like, when I started
Uh,
GregMat Plus, and the first time I ever heard "Am I audible?" I was like, "Excuse me." Right? Another example would be the phrase "mug up." I had no idea what this meant. Another example would be "gave the test." That's another example. Another example would be I know there's more examples. Like anyway, there's more examples. You get my idea,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Okay, let's go to Divya. Hey, Divya.
Hi, Greg. So first off, I joined RigMat plus after reading a lot about you on Reddit. So it probably packed
So
well for
I'm I'm
me.
I'm I'm contradicting. Yeah. That's true. That's true. Okay, everyone, only trust the GRE subreddit.
Yeah, and secondly, my question was, it's a general question about grammar. You pointed out a usage of that and which. I wanted to know what is the rule about that?
So are you looking at the chat box right now? So obviously I can't cover it
No.
all in here, but I want you to Google this:
Okay.
restrictive and
I
non-restrictive
okay.
adjective clauses. Go ahead and Google that, and you'll see the
Okay.
difference.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's do one more question, then we'll call it a day. Hey, Diana.
Thank you, Greg. So, and I think the very important thing is to learn. I think there is no option for us because we're not native speakers. So we just have to learn by heart nouns, prepositions, adjective.
Yeah, do you remember our discussion about trying to change a culture? Remember that? We talked about that earlier in the class.
Yeah.
And then in my travels, I realized that this is just something that shouldn't be done and something that even if you wanted to do it, it's not possible, right? The same is true of American academic culture. You're not going to change these people's minds that grammar matters. You know, in these people's minds, in the admission committee's minds, in the professor's minds, right? You're not going to change their opinion that grammar is important. So like you said, you might as well just accept the fact that I have to do this, right? Like no
Yes.
choice, right? So the more that we try to resist it, the more that we try to, you know, like, oh, I'm going to do it my own way, you know, that kind of stuff is probably going to put you at a disadvantage. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just want to mention the easiest thing. We just learn it by heart. I think that's the best thing, right? Just
Yeah.
memorize. That's it.
Yeah, I mean that's how I do it, and at the same time, just the realization that you don't have a choice. You know, like for
Okay.
example, when I'm writing an email to my boss or whatever, and I write, for example, you know, you is great. Do you think that I would ever send this email?
No.
What if I do something like this? You are great. Do you think I would send this email?
Yes.
No, I wouldn't, because the Y is not capitalized.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And then finally, what if I were to send this email? You are great. Yes or no?
Yes.
It depends. That might be crossing a weird line with my boss. See? It's a lot more complicated than you think it is, right? So that's why I'm trying to give you guys different levels, right? You is great. Wouldn't this be the trauma level? This is basically you have to redo it, right? You got to redo it. There's no getting away with this. Yeah. Number two, this is more like the serious injury. You know, you have to do like extensive editing. And then finally, this one over here is more like the health checkup. You know, so it's more complicated than we think it is, which is why I think it's so important to get it in front of native speakers' eyes. Make sense?
Thank you. Yes.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Yep. So sometimes I'll give you like a quick example of a cultural thing. You know, sometimes I'll get emails from students that'll just say, "Hey, Greg, attach, please find my GRE issue essay. I would really appreciate feedback on this bad boy. Anyway, I'm taking the test in 3 days, so if I can get it before then, that'd be great. Thanks." And I'm like, what is going through your head when you hit send on this email? I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just wondering, like, do you think I'm sitting around just waiting for emails that say, "Please give me feedback"? I'm like, "Oh, I got one. Ooh, feedback time. Boom, 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 boom." You know what I mean? So most of my time is concentrated on, you know, GregMap Plus. Most of my time is focused on, you know, you guys. You know, most of my time is focused on trying to provide the best service I can possible, stuff like that. So even if the email is well written and no grammar mistakes and stuff like that, you still always have to consider, you know, how would maybe a native speaker perceive this? Yeah, stuff like that. Now, do I think these people are bad or overstepping a line? No, I don't think that at all. I just think that maybe it's a little bit of just some confusion about how people perceive different emails, stuff like that. Cool, everybody? So hopefully I made some sense here. I don't know if I did. But everyone, have a great day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.